tell us a bit about the work that you do with Slung Low, and then the differences, not going into too much detail, with Blood and Chocolate.
Well, what we do in Slung Low is we make theatre in unusual spaces. So we make work that isn't on stage. And normally that's to do with putting a piece of theatre in a swimming pool or a train or the city of Hull that in some way recognises what that place is. So all the characters are in swimming trunks because they are actually swimming, but then makes a change to make it magical. So for example, in the show we did in a swimming pool, it looked from the audience like everyone was just going about their regular day, and then water gods arrived and froze everyone in midair. So that we're still in a swimming pool, but it's a swimming pool that has in some way been transformed. Well, the same could be said for Hull. So we knew we were in Hull, none of the characters ever thought they were anywhere but Hull, but all of a sudden they could go on magical journeys, walls fell down to reveal new spaces. I suppose that's still true of Blood and Chocolate. The difference is that we're looking back in time, which isn't something that we've not ever done. So we're still in York, and we're not trying to pretend that we're not in York, but we're not literally where we are. We are talking about a historical place. So that's the big difference. But the ideas of using what exists there already, whether it be the Minster or any of the other handsome places, to create a scene, still stands true.
So with Slung Low, because you've been going about 10, 11 years now as a company. Just tell us the history, because you've changed and evolved massively, as any company does over 10 or 11 years. How did it all start off? What was the nucleus for it?
Well, originally the company started off as a group of graduates from University of Sheffield who just wanted to make theatre in whatever way. And I think if you'd asked us back then what it was we wanted to make, then we wouldn't really have known. Just something. But what we've grown into is a company that recognises that if you make work in non-theatre spaces, in unusual spaces, and you tell stories about that place or in some way connected to that place, you can create a much more heightened reaction from the audience, that there is a resonance there that can be incredibly powerful or very exciting, or in, I think, Blood and Chocolate's instance, people will feel very powerfully that they are connected to these people that walked the streets of York 100 years ago. And that's very exciting. That's what we're really about now. And the other thing that we've always been about is creating that audience experience at the heart of what we're doing. So we used to do stories for one audience member at a time. And they would be literally held by the hand and walked through a play and given something to eat and drink. And actually, looking now at Blood and Chocolate, I was working on the script last night. We are going to do that, but with 300 people instead of one. And I realised that the work we were making 6 or 7 years ago, that people said it was impossible to scale up so you could reach hundreds of people. Actually, we have. You just need 200 people in the company, and then you can do it. But that focus on the audience has always been there.
And Slung Low doesn't just produce that kind of work now, because we're sat here in a space called the Hub, which is your venue, and that's, I mean, how long have you been in this space?
We've been in here a couple of years. It's 5 railway arches. This is the smartest arch, so it's the only one with heating. The others are quite run-down spaces and left like that on purpose, where young artists and artists who make experimental work that wouldn't find a home otherwise present their work here. So we've got, and I think you can hear them in the background chuntering away, a group of artists from Malaysia in today, making God only knows what. But we share the space with people who make performance work in studios.
And that's a big step up for a company to have a building, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly an awful lot of our money goes into running this place now, and a lot of the support we get from the government goes in there. A lot of our time, but we felt that it was, if companies like ours don't start to find a way to click into the infrastructure, Pilot's done it with Shift Happens. If they don't find their own way of doing that, then the arts world, the arts industry, belongs to other people, and not people who want to run little companies that focus on little audiences. And it was really important to us that we made a commitment to everybody out loud that we're here to stay.
And to have a home. And
we've got a home, and we support hundreds of young artists, whether that be lending them our transit van or letting them rehearse here, or just letting them show the work in front of an audience and giving them the box office. However we do that, we do what we can.
Because it seems to me I've done a little bit of acting for you,
Yes.
and we're producing on this together, and I've only been to one Slung Low show so far. But coming here lots, it feels like one of the biggest things as artistic director of Slung Low you insist on is the way that you treat and look after people. It always feels very warm and very friendly, and your audiences you treat as your friends as much as the staff members you see every day here. That's something you kind of drive right through your work, isn't it?
Well, it's brilliant that comes across. I think that's true of the show that you came to see, which was a very unusual Slung Low show in the sense that everyone was sat down. I think it was the first time we'd ever done that. But the audience were greeted at first by Laura, the producer, and then by me, and I was handing out blankets and hot water bottles because it was outdoors and it was that time of year. And, one of the things we're doing with Blood and Chocolate is that we will stay, all of the people who make it, or a large majority of the people who make it, will stay with it all the way through to welcome each member of the audience. Now, whether I get to shake the hand of every member of the audience is probably not quite going to happen this time, but I think that's really important, that we made this and thank you for coming is often appears in our programmes, and that's what drives us, I think. But getting actors high, getting them high up is a big thing at the minute. And then the other thing is, I think both of what we're spending nearly all of our time doing in different ways is, it's so big it's impossible to express to anybody, and if every time information goes out it takes someone 3 days to read it, there's absolutely no way that anyone is going to read it. So how do you keep that constant flow? How do you keep all the people we've got marching in time with each other? And we're joined next week by 200 odd in the cast, so that's only going to get harder. But I would imagine come October, when we look back, that's what we'll have spent most of our time doing.
Yeah. And just kind of looking at your background personally, Al. I mean, obviously Slung Low's a massive part of your kind of your history, but how did you get into directing? How did you find your way to that? What was your background before that educationally? And
I did an English literature degree at the University of Sheffield, which I think back then was pretty much what directors did. Now there's a whole variety of MAs that are encouraged, but they didn't exist when I was a band. I got into it by doing an awful lot of youth theatre and a lot of work in prisons and young offenders institutes. So although Slung Low's always been going on and we were always trying to make work for Edinburgh and those things that you do, actually how I made my living was by making work with offenders of one type or another in institutions, which sometimes when I'm very stressed, that it becomes very clear. That's where I had my training. But I had a whale of a time, and I think, all joking aside, that work does still seep into what we do now. The manner in which all of that was built. Yeah. You get used to making plays really quickly. And so I'm rehearsing a play at the minute, not for Slung Low, in 6 weeks, and it feels like wearing someone else's clothes. Whereas in Slung Low we have about two weeks normally, and we go, yeah, that's fine, that's enough time. Yeah. That comes from working in those where you might have a month, but for 2 weeks of it they're all going to be on lockdown anyway, so it doesn't matter. So yeah. And
you'd wanted to be a director early on then.
Yeah,
when you were at uni, you were.
Yeah, I didn't really know what a director was, but I declared that was. Yeah, I think.
Do you know now?
Really, no. I think I'm very, very pleased and proud to be the artistic director of Slung Low. Whether I'm actually a theatre director or not, I don't know.
If you've got 2 top tips for young people wanting to go into directing, what would they be? Pieces of advice or
see more work. It is amazing how often we don't see work as a community, the number of shows that come and go, and everyone goes, oh, I missed that, and you think, how did we not all go? I'm certain that the arts box office would just double if we all just went to see 3 more pieces a year. Yeah. But the number of people, especially young directors, who come to me and say, I want to be a director, can I assist you? I go, brilliant, but we have so little to talk about. If you want to assist me, see my work, but because that's the only question I ask. Someone writes you a nice letter, as long as it's spelt right and they seem interesting, how are you going to turn any young person who wants to come and work on you down? But I always go, what have you seen that Slung Low's done? And when they go, oh, nothing, then I think probably they wrote a letter to every director in the country and I'm the only one who answered. We have. I worked on a short film last year, and there was a really lovely thing the producer says, which is, what is the hardest what's the most difficult thing we do today? Whatever that thing is, let's put the most of our resources there. So if it's me filming you do something and it's a really painful scene, then we're going to be about looking after you and the camera, because those are the only two things that matter. And the number of processes, whatever they are, where people are worried about the things that are out, and because they've been told they have to, or if we're a proper theatre company, we'll care about this. And you go, what's the most important thing we do today? This. Then put most of your resources there and focus. That doesn't mean there aren't other things to do in that day, but it's amazing how many times you get to the end of the day and you haven't done what it is you've wanted to, but a load of other stuff that's stuff that other people think's important. So I think asking that question constantly, what's the most difficult thing I do today? Then put your emphasis on that.